Hello, everyone. Welcome to our BookTrib live chat. It's my pleasure to introduce you to John Dixon today. He's the author of Phoenix Island, and our chat today is a part of the International Thriller Writers Series. And John is a member of ITW. He's also has a wonderful success story about Thriller Fest, which we'll discuss later on in the chat. And for those of you who don't know, Thriller Fest is the annual ITW conference. This year, it's July 8th through the 12th at the Grand Hyatt in New York City. And Thriller Fest is the largest gathering of New York Times best-selling authors under one roof. It's also known as summer camp for writers and fans, where established and aspiring writers come together from all over the world for workshops, panels, cocktail parties, speed pitching with agents. There's an awards banquet, and it's great fun. Now, John himself, he's a former boxer. He was a teacher and a stonemason, but he now writes full-time and serves as a consultant to ABC Studios. And what's more, what some of you might know is that John's debut novel, which we're talking about today, The Phoenix Island, it inspired the CBS TV series Intelligence. We're giving away copies of Phoenix Island today, so after the chat, head on over to booktrib.com and enter to win. And as always, remember to sign up at BookTrib to get the latest on live chats, giveaways, original content, and more. And if you're interested in checking out Thriller Fest this year, be sure to go to thrillerfest.com. So without further ado, please help me welcome John Dixon. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Oh, hi. Thanks a lot for having me.
Now, before we get rolling to talk about Phoenix Island, can you tell us a little bit more about how you became involved with ITW and what your experience was like as an aspiring author at Thriller Fest?
Yeah, I love the ITW, and Thriller Fest was really my introduction. For years, I had heard about Thriller Fest. I heard, when you're really serious, you have to check out Thriller Fest. And I knew that there were a lot of great writers there. I didn't know until just a few seconds ago, though, that it was the largest gathering of New York Times bestsellers. It doesn't surprise me because you can't turn around without bumping into one. But
Yeah.
I kept hearing, it's a very professional con, and I've been writing for a long time, and I've been really practicing my craft, and I thought I was getting better. And then finally, when I wrote Phoenix Island, I thought, I might have something here. But when you're writing, you never really know. But I knew I really wanted to go in and do it right. I wanted to get an agent, and I knew the top agents were going to Thriller Fest. So I finally decided, all right, I'm going to take this seriously. And that's how I was introduced to the first Thriller Fest.
Great.
So,
You know what, John? If you could just take out your earbuds, we're having a little bit of trouble hearing you.
is that clearer?
It's better, much better. Thank you. That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that story. It was really an unprecedented opportunity for aspiring writers. I mean, you just don't get FaceTime with agents and editors and that sort of thing. So there's really nothing else like it.
Yeah,
Was it
and
scary?
I'm sorry.
Oh no, go on, go on.
I was just going to say it was such an amazing experience. I knew there were some conventions where you had pitches, but it's so well done at Thriller Fest. And it used to be called Agent Fest. Now it's called Pitch Fest, and it's around 60 of the top editors and agents. And you have a speed dating setup where you'll rotate around the room and you do your homework up front. You know which agents you're going to prioritize, and you wait in lines. Popular agents' lines are really long, and maybe newer agents don't have quite as long a lines. And you just judge your time and prioritize your agents, and you go and you have about 3 to 5 minutes to pitch to each agent. I was
Was it
super
scary?
nervous.
Oh
It
yeah,
was,
there
yeah.
you go.
But I did make one wise move, and I always tell new people at Thriller Fest to do this. Um, don't start with your top agent. Start with an agent that is, a great agent, but somebody that you don't necessarily see yourself signing with. And I started with someone with whom we had a common friend, and I knew that she didn't really represent what I was writing. But it was nice to go and sit down with her first and talk to her, get my jitters out, and get her reactions to it. Because as you go along, you make little adjustments to your pitch. You see what agents are reacting to and not reacting to, and you make these little on-the-fly adjustments. and it gets less scary. So by the end, as strange as it sounds, it was fun.
Oh, that's
The
wonderful.
first two I talked to said no, um, and at that point I thought, oh, I'm in trouble. But then
Hmm.
the next nine all said yes. They all wanted to
Wow,
see my manuscript, so it was exciting. Um,
that's
and
incredible.
then about 2 days later, I was still at the convention, and my phone rang, and it was one of the agents saying, "Hey, you didn't send your manuscript yet." Um, and that's when I knew something had changed. So a week later, I had an offer representation, and uh, 2 weeks later, I had four offers. I had sent out to half of the
Wow.
agents. It was great. I had sent out to half the agents thinking I would be rejected
Hmm.
and that I would learn from the rejections, but it didn't go that way. Everybody who read it had offered representation, and then began this exciting but crazy nervous time of trying to choose the right agent because they were all great. And I interviewed and went back to New York, talked to people, and it was pretty nerve wracking. But then I made the right choice. I ended up with Christina Hogerby at the Jane Rotrosen Agency. They're
Oh,
awesome.
excellent. That's such a great story. Thanks so much for sharing that with us, really.
Oh, thanks, man.
Now, so now Phoenix Island is out, and it's turned into a new TV show, which is incredible.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more for those of us who aren't so familiar with your book. Tell us a little bit more about it.
Well, Phoenix Island is a thriller. It was originally intended as a young adult thriller, a little bit on the older
Okay.
side, sort of on the same level of edginess as The Hunger Games.
Okay.
But it's funny. I think that most of the readers have been adults. That's what at least it seems to be. Most of the people getting in touch with me about it are adults. But it's the story of Carl Freeman, who's a 16-year-old boxing champion. He's also an
Mhm.
orphan, and he's been getting in a lot of trouble for beating up bullies. It's his only offense, but he does it again and again. And in
Mhm.
chapter one, he's in juvenile court for the umpteenth time, and the judge sends him to Phoenix Island, which is an isolated boot camp for teen offenders off the coast of Mexico, or so it seems. Carl gets there, he realizes that every kid's an orphan, and this isn't really a teen boot camp. It's a mercenary training facility, and they're turning these throwaway kids into super soldiers, bloodthirsty super soldiers, even worse. So he just
Mhm.
has to risk everything then to try to save his friends and stop everything that's going on there.
Oh, that's fabulous. Now, you're a former Golden Gloves boxer, and can you tell us a little bit more about that experience and why you decided to incorporate, boxing into Phoenix Island?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, boxing is at my core. I started when I was just a little kid. I wasn't that old. I guess I was 13 years old. After many, many years of informal boxing with my older brother, who won.
Mhm.
Um, and then so I fought through my teens, and then I boxed for Penn State, and then I moved to Philadelphia
Wow.
because Philadelphia is the best boxing city in the world. And at that point in
Mhm.
my life, I thought I was gonna earn my living as a fighter. And
Mhm.
yeah, but I ended up, instead of going pro, I ended up teaching, and I made the right choice, because my brains are still
Mhm.
relatively intact. But then when it came time to write Phoenix Island, it was really a no-brainer to throw in the boxer because
Mhm.
uh, I had I had written this character sketch of Carl, the main character, probably 2 years before I started the book, and I loved it, but I
Mhm.
was busy with other stuff, and I didn't have any idea what his story was. And then I heard about this Cash for Kids scandal, where these
Mm.
judges, Pennsylvania judges, were sending kids with really no advocacy at all off to privately run institutions, and then it was proven they were getting kickbacks for really ugly stuff. And
Mhm.
then I was researching offshore boot camps where kids from the U.S. are sent out and they don't have the same laws that we do. And my mind started spinning, and I thought, wow, they could do horrible things. You know, who could survive this? And then this kid from this sketch I had done a year or two earlier popped in my head, and he was a fighter. I mean, I thought, well, he could take it. If there's one person that could take it, it was him. So boxing is, at my core, and I always wanted to write a story about a fighter, and just dump a lot of bad stuff on his head.
Mm. Now, do you think being a boxer helped you become a better writer, like the discipline of training and, keeping your mind in check when you're, in a fight, that sort of thing? Does it help you write better?
Well, it's funny. There are a lot of writers who have boxed to some degree or another. I don't know why, but I do know that it helped me with rejection. I had an awful lot of rejections writing short stories for years,
Hmm.
and none of those hurt as much as a good body shot. So I do I do think that there's truth though to the training parallel. I mean, you really do have to train hard all the time for boxing. And, most of us didn't have the greatest athletic ability in the world. We just had to take what we had and just train and train and train, much like writing. Most of us aren't the
Hmm.
greatest writers in the world, but we just have to read and write and read and write and read and write. And then over time, you get better and you find what you're good at and you just push it as hard as you can. And that's how it goes. So there are lots of parallels. Um,
Hmm.
it didn't hurt because I didn't go pro.
Now, when did you start writing? Had you been writing, in your boxing days? Were you writing since you were a little kid? When did that start for you?
Yeah, it actually started really early. Um, I mean, I never thought of myself as a writer, but I just always wrote stories. And when I was in third grade, I had this excellent teacher, Mrs. Wolf, and she was really strict, but she also let us write stories. And I was kind of bad at that point, and kind of
Hmm.
very bad. And I had been in trouble early on as a kid, and she sort of made me do what I had to do, which was good. And then she loved my stories, and she even typed one up, and she sent
Oh.
my parents a note. Yeah, for me, it was a really new experience. And she sent this note to my parents saying that John is going to be an author someday. And it really mattered. And then
Hmm.
she informed my fourth grade teacher that I liked to write stories. And I was writing like 15-page stories when I was 8 and 9 years old. I was really into it.
Pretty cool.
And so my fourth grade teacher, Miss Ford, now Miss Ayers, kept it going. And I had these books that I would write stories and illustrate. So then I kept writing stories sort of privately through middle school
Hmm.
and high school. I never really showed anybody. I didn't think of myself as being good at writing stories. I just liked it. And it
Hmm.
wasn't until the end of college that I started to think I would try to be better at it. And I still wasn't
Hmm.
thinking I would publish. And then after college, I started sending things out and got more serious. So I was writing every day the year after college and just never stopped that. So
Well, that's great. Now, obviously, people want to know about, you know, intelligence and how that happened. Now, were you surprised when you found out that the rights were, purchased for for the series or anything like that? And what's your hand in it if you have one at all? And we'd love to hear a little more about that.
yeah, it was a long process filled with very exciting moments. But it I think what happened was because there was so much interest at Thriller Fest
Hmm.
about with the manuscript and the agents, I think film scouts caught wind of that because by
Oh,
the time I
wow.
chose, yeah, so by the time I chose my agent, she was getting calls. It was like 2 weeks after Thriller Fest, she was getting calls from film scouts,
That's
and
incredible.
yeah, yeah, it was a blessing. So I didn't at that point, nothing really was going on, but she got in touch with Joe Veltri from Gersh, who's now my film agent, because Rot
Hmm.
Rosen doesn't handle film, and he was very quietly behind the scenes shopping it. And Joe used to be the director of development for thriller books into movies for Miramax,
Hmm.
and he really knows
Hmm.
the business. And he was shopping out, getting it onto people's desks and everything. And that was pretty much all I heard about it. We were busy with the book, revising, getting ready to go on submission, and yeah. Then the funniest thing, I had never talked to Joe. I just knew
Hmm.
he was back there, and I get a call, and this woman says, "I have Joe Veltri on the phone for you," and he comes on and tells me, "Well, there's a producer who's interested." He's going to call, and I thought he was talking 3 days, 3, 4 days from then we were going to set it up and everything.
Mhm.
Um, Meanwhile, I was driving to a hot dog place called Jimmy John's Hot Dogs. It's this little road, it's this little roadside place. It's been there since 1940. It's filled with children
Mhm.
blowing whistles and trains and stuff. It's really
Mhm.
loud and great, but not a great place to take a phone call that's going to change your life. So um, I go to Jimmy John's, I get a hot dog, and then the phone rings, and it's another person. I say, we have Trip Vincent on the phone for you. And Trip is the producer of a bunch of hit movies. Um, and he said, yeah, read your book, loved your book. Well, first of all, I couldn't hear him, so I ran out to my truck and I sat along this
Did you have
road.
your hot dog yet, though?
I had half of a hot dog.
Okay, good.
Um, I probably ate the rest. Honestly, I can't remember now, um, because it was such a big moment. But yeah,
Yeah.
so he said he was going to fly out from LA. I'm in Philadelphia, and he told me hop on the train. And the next week we met and we sat down and we talked about it. And he gave me the greatest advice. He said, "Look, this is a long shot. There are a million things that can go wrong. You're an unknown author. It was his
Mhm.
first time in television, so he said, we celebrate every hurdle. This is a hurdle. We're celebrating." And he
Mhm.
sort of outlined all these different long steps we had to go through to turn it into a show. And sure enough, I just celebrated every hurdle. I tried never to pin my happiness or all my hopes on it actually being made into a show because I knew it was such a long
Mhm.
shot. So when we got Michael Seitzman, the showrunner and head writer, to come on board, celebrated, usually by going back to that hot dog place. And then when we got our director, when we had different people come on board, we would celebrate. And then it was optioned by ABC Studios.
Mhm.
Um, and that was just a really exciting moment. But I still knew it was a huge long shot. I mean, I don't even know how many books get optioned, but lots.
Mm.
So then maybe a month later, when it was pitched to CBS, the network that would actually end up airing it, that was a biggie. So it was picked up by CBS, and at that point, they had picked up maybe 100 dramas. There were potential shows. So it's still a long shot, but it was just a great moment. Um, and then I guess it was a few months later that we got the news that it got the green light to be a pilot, and they were going to shoot this pilot. And then, we were one of 11 candidates for about 2 slots that CBS had open. So still a huge long shot, especially when you're up against
Mm.
people like Jerry Bruckheimer. Um,
Yeah.
and you're up against like Eddie Murphy was doing a reboot of Beverly Hills Cop, and everybody said that was the #1 show that was definitely going to be picked up on any network. So we knew there were
Mhm.
long odds. But then Josh Holloway was on board and Mark Helgenberger, and we had a great group of people. So I celebrated then by going to the set and watching them film the pilot, and everybody was great. And then finally, the news came in May. A friend sent me an email and it said, in case you hadn't heard. And I looked down and well, first of all, I should back up one step. We were going to get the
Mhm.
bad news that we weren't picked up on May 15th. Um,
Okay.
and this was May 10th. So I was sort of
Oh.
dreading the following Wednesday. It was a Friday night. I had 5 days of pretending I was going to have a TV show on. And I figured then they were going to announce that we were not chosen. So the email comes in and says, in case you hadn't heard. And I look and there's a link, and the link, I follow it out, and it says CBS had picked up intelligence and hostages, and I couldn't believe it. And in fact, I didn't believe it, and I backed out. I thought it was a hoax,
Mm.
and just misinformation on the web. And there's an email from my film agent, and it just says, "So happy for you, John." And it was a
Wow.
link to it. It was crazy, and it was a link to another. It was a link to another article saying the same thing. And then 10 minutes later, the phone rings, and it was Trip, and I'm just pacing the deck behind my house. Beautiful day, May 10th, and he says, "Hey, you remember when we talked about crossing the hurdles? All those hurdles?" He goes, "Well, we crossed the last one." It was great.
Oh, that's excellent. Now, I wanted to ask back to Phoenix Island. It had a few title changes, and the original name was Dissident and then back to Phoenix Island. And was there any reasoning behind the changes? And did it have anything to do with the story you were ultimately telling? And this is from Elizabeth. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, Elizabeth. Um, yeah, it did have some title changes, and that was a really frustrating thing because the original title was Phoenix Island. Um,
Hmm.
so I my working title was Phoenix Island, and
Hmm.
then at the agency we decided that maybe it was better to change the title, and we sort of settled on Dissident as the title. Um, and my heart was never really in Dissident, so I was happy when my editor said that they also didn't think that Dissident would get the job done. But you know, there were a number of reasons why we went with Dissident for a while there, and it sold under Dissident.
Hmm.
But it's funny, a good writing friend of mine, Victoria Thompson, she is the author of the Gaslight series.
Hmm.
She was a big help, a real mentor to me when I was writing the book, and she told me, she's like, I'll bet you $1 that your editor, even if you say nothing, will ask you to change this title back to Phoenix Island. So I said nothing, and he called up one day, Adam Wilson at Simon and Schuster Gallery Books. He said, you know, I've been thinking about other titles, and I made a list, and the one that just keeps coming back to me is Phoenix Island. So
Yeah.
so it went full circle, and yeah, so I'm happy to be back.
Oh, great. Yeah. Now, Donna Barnes says, who was the hardest character to write and develop in Phoenix
Um,
Island?
yeah, I would say the hardest major character was Octavia, just because she's a teenage girl, and I've never been a teenage girl, so I was sort of second guessing myself. She was a lot of fun to write, and I really like her a lot. You'll see a lot of her backstory in the character Riley on Intelligence. You can,
Oh, okay.
she was the inspiration for Riley. Um,
Great.
so she was a lot of fun to write, and I'm happy with the way she turned out. But she was tough because I've never been a teenage girl, and I find it much easier to write about um, young women or women than I do from the point of view of a teenage girl. So that was the trickiest.
Did you have anyone help you with that? Did anyone give you feedback specifically about her character? Or did you just kind of feel your way through?
Yeah, I had a big advantage because I taught for so long. And I've
Oh,
known,
right, of course.
yeah. So I had that, and I was a caseworker too. I was a caseworker for at-risk youth for the better part of a year. So I've really gotten to
Mm.
know lots of kids, male and female both, and that was a big help. And then I just wrote it straight through. But I had Vicky Thompson, I had my friend Don Bentley, and I had a great author Tim Wagner, sort of helping me out along the way. And
Hmm.
they would comment once in a while on things, just making sure I kept things straight. But it ended up being it was fine. I think it was more I was second guessing myself. Self doubt, of course, is the big curse of writers.
Hmm. Now, I'm sure you get this question all the time, but we'd love to know. George A. wants to know, how do you develop your ideas? Oops, where is it? How, okay, here we go. How do you develop your ideas? And, are you a pantser or a plotter?
Um, I'm still figuring that out.
Hmm.
I started as a pantser many years ago, and it would take me a long time to write a book, um, and lots of wasted time. And with Phoenix Island, I planned more than I ever had before, and it ended up being really good. And then when I wrote the sequel, which I just delivered about a month ago, it's called
Excellent.
Devil's Pocket.
Congratulations.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, the work. There's still plenty of work, work to go,
Right.
but it's nice to have it, out of my hands for a little while. Um,
Hmm.
and I think in the beginning I actually planned too much for that one. So um, I had to take a step back from that outline and get back to inventing so that it's fun and surprising myself with better stuff in the process. So I think in reality, um, what's best for me is probably a blend. I should probably know the big overstructure and then let the rest of it surprise me. I think it's a very personal thing. Some people are
Hmm.
dogmatic by nature and they want to be really a sort of a fascist attitude about outlining or not
Hmm.
outlining. I- it's whatever works for you. In
Hmm.
my case, I think it's a hybrid thing.
Definitely. Well, what are some things that your readers might not know about you?
Hmm. Um, well, lots and lots and lots of things. Now that I just don't know which ones are particularly interesting. Um, I love chess. I'm not the greatest chess player, but I obsessed over it for portions of my life. I've sort of not gone cold turkey, but close to cold turkey because it's such an obsession with me. I love
Hmm.
hot peppers. I grow the world's hottest pepper. It's called a Carolina Reaper.
Oh,
And just I think I think it's because I've broken my nose so many times that my sense of taste has been affected. I have no sense of smell, so
oh
the
wow.
heat the heat sort of replaces taste for me. I mean,
Oh,
I do
interesting.
taste food, but I think that's just that extra level.
Mm. What do
Yeah,
you cook with the hot pepper?
oh, everything. I put I put peppers and hot sauces on almost everything. Um, I, but I'd say the only way I really do the super hot ones normally is to put them into a stir fry. Throw in,
Okay.
throw in a maruga scorpion with a bunch of vegetables and some meat. Burn my face off. Yeah.
Sounds good. Now, something that we always ask our authors is where do you do your writing? Do you do it at home? Do you have a home office? Do you go somewhere else? Do you need to be isolated or can you basically do it anywhere?
I like to pretend I can do it anywhere, and
Hmm.
I do end up writing everywhere. Um, for example, the best chapter, the the earliest chapter that really caught me with Devil's Pocket, and I knew I was onto something, was a chapter I wrote while sitting sort of lotus style on my hotel bed at Comic-Con. Um,
Okay.
yeah, I had gone up there to sign advanced readers copies, and I also wrote my synopsis for Devil's Pocket at Comic-Con at the Javits Center with my
Wow.
back against a wall on my phone. Um, so on occasion, I'll write anywhere, but I maybe twice a month I'll go to the library, the Chester County Library, and write there. But other than that, it's at home. I have sort of a office library in downstairs, and that's my usual place unless I get
Hmm.
distracted or unless my
Hmm.
puppy, who is insane, is just like going crazy in his crate or trying to bite me. And then I'll come where you see me now, which is sort of a guest room. I've got a folding table and I have a thing called a Neo, an Alpha Smart Neo. It's just
Hmm.
this little word processor and it's bare bones.
Oh,
So I've
excellent.
got, yeah, that's where most of it gets done, honestly. Most
What
of
kind of
Phoenix
puppy?
Island and Devil's Pocket were written that way.
Yeah. What kind of puppy do you have? We love animals here.
A rambunctious puppy. He's a border collie,
Oh,
and
so
yeah, oh yeah,
cute.
he's crazy, and but he's great. He's getting better. I have an 11-year-old border collie that I just love to death.
Hmm.
So thought, well, we'll get another border collie, and then here comes Pete, and he's completely
Hmm.
insane. So this morning I took him for a long walk, probably about 2.5, 3 miles out through this great place. It's woods and fields, and he's so much happier when he gets a good solid walk in like that. And the two dogs
Hmm.
really connect and everything. So he's learning on the fly.
That's cute. Now, what are some things that you like to do when you aren't writing? And this question is from Kat.
Um, well, I spent a lot of time telling my puppy not to chew my shoes. I love playing chess. It's just dangerous because I get obsessed and then I will play chess instead of write. Of course, I
Hmm.
read. I read all the time, and I do like to box. I don't compete anymore, no way. But I have boxing equipment in my basement, and I can just flick on a timer and go down there and do 3 minutes of a workout, and then I have a minute rest, and I just can forget everything. Turn on loud music, and so yeah, that's really my enjoyment.
Oh, great. Well, we're getting to the end here, John, and I wanted to thank you again for talking with us today. It's been a pleasure. Will you be at Thriller Fest this year?
Oh, I will, yeah. And in fact,
Excellent.
I love Thriller Fest, and I even still go to the Craft Fest portion where
Oh,
they
great.
a
Yeah.
couple days before actual Thriller Fest begins, where they have classes, and the classes are so good, and you meet so many great people that I'll still be going to that as well. I feel like I can
Oh,
always learn
wonderful.
more, keep trying to get better. Will you be
Oh,
going?
well, I'll be there. I'll be
Oh,
there.
outstanding.
Uh, yeah, and anyone who's watching who's in the New York area, again, it's July 8th through the 12th. You can sign up at thrillerfest.com. It's at the Grand Hyatt in Manhattan. And also go pick up a copy of Phoenix Island. Watch Intelligence, and you can actually enter to win a copy of Phoenix Island at booktrib.com. And thanks again, John.
Well, thanks so much for having me, and thanks everyone for your questions.